Hey guys, it's me again, Orxler. Where I last left off is Bell went and passed out because he had stayed up all night fighting off an entire horde of monsters. Someone pointed out to me that I was saying Deku quite a lot. This is a Bell what if. Tell you truth, for me, I always heard Bell, not Deku. So, as this is a Bell what if, that is your question answered. That one dude, I can't remember the name of. Dude or girl, whichever. Let's see. Well, Deku and his and this will be like Deku's forces are pulled completely back. With the amount of numbers they have and the amount of forces that are unknown, Gary decides to pull Bell back because he decides that it's too much of a risk to worth losing Bell's elite forces, as he would label them as, his, elite shock troops or whatever. So as Bell and them are marching backwards, they're, woken up at 12, because I'll say it was, 6 when she got, 6, not 6, 10 when she got there. They got to sleep for, I guess, they slept till, 3. So they got to sleep for 5 hours. As well as alright, we'll get everything moving. God, I hate you. Oh. So, as he shrugs everything off, he and Bell and his forces start their march. With, Margaret, that's why I called her, Margaret. They're all marching back to the position of Gary. And I'll say they make it in there, in a day's travel, they get back. Yeah, I'll say it's 2 days it took them, Gary and her, to get there. 2 days, as she arrived there, after he, sent out all the messages, he said to go report back and to give a sort of status report, or to see if that they were still there within after a day. She delivers her message to Gary. Then Gary's so how did things go for you, Bell? We lost another 200 pit fighters. If I'm gonna be able to keep on playing in this game, if I'm gonna keep on doing this, Gary, I'm gonna need more troops. And I'll be right back real quick. Hey guys, it's me again, not hey guys, it's me again. I'm back. So I just went and looked it up. The names for Deku's second commands are Aaron, the King of Lions, Loken, Cassius the Bear, and Lucius. Lucius had a name as well. I was looking at these titles, trying to remember the titles, but I can remember the name. It's Aaron, King of Bears, not King of Bears, King of Lions. Cassius is the Bear. And, sorry, but I can't remember the names. But Bell essentially gives them the laydown that they cannot continue fighting this without gaining more troops. Because from what they have, they don't really have enough to even form a proper defense against one of the things. Because from what it looks like, they've managed to get inside. They've managed to cross that bridge. Who knows how many have gone across that bridge at this moment? There could be 5, not even 5,000, 2,000 of them ready to attack a village right now. To have them be used to create more ghouls. And to specify how they create them, it's not like they turn them. It's just that, if any of you seen the Great Wall, there's some of the ghouls and such are specifically specific purpose to breed. But they aren't the queens, they're just, the mothers. So, and it's also similar in how the more they eat, the more of the monsters, ghouls and such, that they can produce. and they can reproduce normal way. This is just like it's like similar to frogs and such. They can, but they don't always have to, which is actually very useful when it comes to survival in one species. So, as the queens are just constantly like eating a large source, not queens, I guess the mothers or spawners are eating a large majority of food and such to like keep up with the numbers that they're losing. And they can also cannibalize, so the mothers can cannibalize on the ones that have fallen, and they'll reuse them and such. So as Belle's forces and them are consolidating their forces, and Gary has managed to recruit or been able to pay the Amazons, which consists of Aisha and that like group of Amazons. Aisha and her group. They don't have the Toad. I forget her name. I always forget the Toad lady's name. But Ishtar sometimes sends out. Well, doesn't send out. But the Amazons have free permission to leave in and out. And some of them form mercenary groups and whatnot, because the Amazons are warrior women. And they were some of the best warriors as far as like legends and such go. They were like the best warriors. So as they've been recruited, Belle and them have been going on a conscripting drive, conscripting every single pit fighter slave or slave that looks like they can even like laboring slave that can be used, because laborers tend to have a lot of muscles. In some cases, a lot of the ones they pick are very built. So, as Belle's forces organizes forces, setting some to archery, setting some to infantry, and some of the pit fighters that have been since Belle's pit fighters and such, like the war hounds, aren't just under Gary, like all of them are under Gary's. Several of them have been bought by different slave masters wanting to get more entertainment out of certain slaves instead of having this weak stock. So a bunch of more slave pit fighters that were taken from Belle's who have adopted his traditions. Traditions actually. With the chains and the animal skins. So Belle's warhounds have been brought up back, because I believe I said they lost like 50 or 25 in the first battle, then I said like another 25 in the next battle. So they've lost around they still have 450, maybe even less. I'm not entirely sure, but I'll say they lost quite a bit. So now I'll say, since they're recruiting more, and some of the ones that used to be his students, since they're being brought back into the fold, they're joining the ranks of the warhounds. And as Belle's realized this, I'll say the warhounds, since I'll say that they recruit around 3,000 troops, the warhounds are still very powerful. Yeah, the warhounds are still very powerful. Actually, wait. I think I said Belle had 1,500 and 500 of those consisted of the warhound. Of Belle and about... I don't know exactly. I forget what I said entirely. So I'll just say Belle's forces are swelled to around 3,000 that are put under his command. And he gives command to a certain extent of his troops to his second commands, Aaron, Cassius, Lucius, and Loken. They're his like top students, or they're his first students in a way, and they follow him. Aaron is his second command, so he's like his lieutenant. Belle's a captain and such, so the rest are lieutenants or majors and such, and blah blah blah. As Belle organizes his troops into a formidable force once again, deciding who goes who, where goes where, and how many are joining the ranks of the warhounds. The warhounds have been given around 1,000 more well, is that a good number? I'll say about, well, if there's around, I believe I said, I don't know, maybe less than 200 left, their numbers have been swelled to around 800, with the 2,200 remaining being consistent of Norse spearmen, archers, and swordsmen. The warhounds are their elite troops. And they all have the same thing, like axes, 2 axes, 1 axe, halberds, and such, and the chains as well as animal skins draped over animal skins and such, being like over their armor to signify a very special kill. Bell and them have focused on this. So Bell's forces are ready to go. But at this time, I'll say this is what is happening with and I'll say this takes the preparations over a month. Nothing has really happened with the ghouls. Some villages and towns have gone dark. So a month span and such. And this is what has happened with the enemy of the ghouls. There's eight wizards and dozens of special warriors underneath them. What's happening now is that they've come to realize that they cannot win this war just with ghouls alone. So what they'll be doing is that they'll be recruiting other monsters and such. And I'll say around those mountains are very dangerous tribes of barbarians and such. They send several emissaries consisting of the mages and several warriors and such to go defend them. They speak to the chieftains of these groups, saying that if they pledge their loyalty to them, they will see that they are no longer harassed or terrorized by the ghoul menace ever again. And they display their control over the ghouls. This gets pretty much every single clan there to rally behind them, which gives them and I'll say all the clans made up, there were like dozens of clans and tribes and such, so that gives them around an army of people around 10,000. That's quite a lot, I know, but think about this. Hundreds of tribes, dozens and hundreds of tribes with hundreds of members each. It's quite a lot, yeah. I won't say like single tribe has 1,000 people, because I don't know if that's really accurate. I'll just say they have dozens of tribes with hundreds upon hundreds of people in single one. So as all the warriors are prepped and ready, a lot of them are consistent of ancient Vikings and such. Like there's berserkers, several different historical people. They have a tribe that specializes in horse riding combat and such, similar to how some Native American tribes were. There's some that specialize in just brute savagery and such. There's a plethora of different tribes. And so for their monsters and such, what they'll be equipped with is, of course, Bell's greatest fear, salamanders and such. Similar to that one he fought, and they are only able to get those ones because their minds are more easily influenced than that as a full adult one. And plus, trying to cast a spell on a full adult one to get its mind controlled is quite difficult. So as they attempted it, but it wasn't really successful. They didn't lose any troops, they just weren't able to do it. For this, some of the people working under these mages and such do have the ideals of metal crafting and such. So some ghouls and such, some monsters and such, they don't equip every single monster and such. Just certain beta ghouls that are bigger than the average beta ghoul, not the size of an alpha, but bigger than the average beta, is equipped with metal armor and is sent crashing into the front lines. The smaller ghouls are the lesser ghouls are allowed to be however they want. The people, though, like the humans and such, they're given primitive armor such as scale mail and such. Long before plate and such became a primary thing. They get like little sheets of metal and such put on alongside of armor, and very crudely made axes and spears. They're not perfect to the designs of the Empire, but they will do, and they have the numbers crush certain parts. So as this war machine is organized, and I'll say their forces have swelled to well over 30,000, with the ghouls constantly making more lesser ghouls, and several more, like dozens of more tribes joining them, as well as super heavy monsters being called into, like the teenage, well, I guess can be best described as the teenage salamanders and such, as well as baby salamanders and such are prepared to be sent into the fray. Bell's forces have not been joking either. This takes a span over 3 months, maybe like 3-4 months, so it's quite a while. Bell and them are preparing constantly. Bell's forces are still going strong, and since they've had more time to train them, this is an expert fighting force. Because they, like, some of them would just think, oh, they'll just like we'll throw Bell and his slaves at the army, and Gary's like, no, there are special troops. And at this point, Bell has sort of gotten the use of gaining control. And as the Empress and such came to check on on Gary's progress with throwing back this assault from these mages, who she suspects may be from a group of slaves that had escaped and such, and have a certain bone to pick with them, or they could just be some power-hungry mages. Who knows? As Bell and their forces are prepped and ready to go, Bell has outfitted, given the not heroic speech, but at this point, the mercenary group of Aisha's little mercenary group are sent to rendezvous with Bell's 3,000 men. Aisha is not impressed with the Empire's military at all, since a lot of the men are, because I know Amazons sometimes are bigger than most of are depicted as big, strong women and such, so I'll say they're a bit taller than the average man and such. Well, they're about the same size or a bit taller than the average man. So as they're not expecting much from what they've been told is just a group of pit fighters and slaves and such, as they see this marching towards them, they see Bell at the head of the army. He's not on a horse, he marches alongside his brothers, as he would refer his brothers and sisters. So as he meets up with Aisha and such, she's kind of bewildered at the size of him. Well, not even him. His warriors and his, captains and such, or lieutenants, are leading the front as they, have everyone organized. As they come into contact with Aisha's group and such, they're like, oh! As Bell was making sure everything was okay in the back, Aisha and them sort of questioned, so, which one of you is the Warhound? As they're like, Master Warhound! What are you? The Amazonian mercenaries. Ah. The Amazonian mercenaries have come to reinforce. As Bell hears this, Bell is very excited, because he knows that they'll prove very valuable to his troops and such. So, as they were surprised at the size of Bell's students, they were not prepared for the size of Bell himself. Because if I remember correctly, I said Aaron and them are the biggest of his students, and there will be 6'6" is what I said, maybe 6'4". They stand much taller than Aisha and them, but when they see Bell, a 7'2", 7'4" giant, as he marches through the straight line, he's like, you are commander of the Amazonians, yes? That is right, Warhound, and you must be commander of the Warhounds. He's like, indeed. Come. We are marching to this position in preparations to launch an assault. She's like, very well, we'll tag along, I guess. Aisha's mercenary group stands at 1,500. Well, I'll say about 600. So they're absorbed into Belle's 3,600 now. 3,600 now. So as they talk, the veterans have been given, like, leading roles and such. Several of the veterans have proven themselves to be among of Belle's warhounds and such, not just the ones being brought outside. Several of the veterans from the group have been brought into Belle's warhounds and such. Though they aren't the biggest, they are some of the best. And so as Gary and Margaret have assembled several other slave owners and such, and they've gathered their troops, they're all marching to hold the pieces I forget what's called. At the sort of forming a containment zone, not on the bridges, but around the bridges, entrances and such. And Belle actually, at one point when they all like assemble for one meeting, Aisha and them are there, as Belle towers over every man and woman there. He towers over all of them. He speaks to Gary and says, "What about any straggler, any of those ghouls that were sent over? What's our plan to do with them? We've had plenty of sayings that several villages have gone dark along this wall." And I'll say Belle's quote-unquote army is at the ready, or Belle's side is at the ready with around 12,000 troops. And they have mages, their own mages and such, that have fire blast, ice blast, lightning blast and such. They have around 100 mages for this 20,000 strong army. Like I said, this is a very big and powerful empire, so as Belle and them are all prepped and ready to go, they all get the battle plan, is that they are to push into the territory and such. So as Belle brings up more very important question, doesn't really bring up any questions actually, but some of the other lords are talking about important questions. Then Belle asks, are there any other villages and such, or even tribes of people around those mountains? As this question is brought up, yes, there are supposedly dozens of tribes up there. Why do you ask? He says, could those tribesmen have possibly joined them? If so, how big of a problem would that be? As this is said, Belle and them sort of saying, well, that's preposterous. Why would they side with these mages that control ghouls? The things that would probably be the bane of their existence, Belle. Well, think about it. If the mages bring the promises of being able to control the ghouls that have so furiously killed them and slaughtered their people, would they not jump at the chance to have these beasts taken away from their homeland to go kill somebody else? It makes sense, does it not? And some of them start getting this idea in their head. Aisha also looks at Belle thinking he's much smarter than she actually thought. So, as they all say, alright, what do you propose then? I think we need a lot more than 20,000 is what I'm saying. The army is split up between Belle's 3,000, not split up, but Belle had each powerful enough lord, I guess would be the right saying. Gary's the head of the army. Margaret's in command of a couple thousand troops. Belle has his 3,000, as well as 3,600 actually. That goes with Aisha's little mercenary group, are all set up and ready to go. And the rest are divided up between the rest of the remaining lords. Belle actually meets up with Margaret for a bit and talks about how she thinks this whole thing's gonna go. She doesn't really have a beef with Margaret. She may be a slaver, but she's pretty chill once you get to know her. She's just really doing her job and such, or her duty. As he gets to know her better, she tells how she was a slave, then Gary sort of, in a weird way, sort of saved her, and that becoming a slave was probably the best thing to ever happen to her. As Deku is confused by this, she explains that her life used to be nothing but misery. But when she became a slave, sure, she no longer had her freedom, but she was protected, fed, and clothed. Sure, not all slaves have that, great of a life, but personally, I had a fantastic one. And a lot of those, the pit fighters, Belle, some of those slaves down there were criminals. You know this, right? What about my village, huh? You cut us down like there was no tomorrow. When my father resisted your men taking him, they just killed him right then and there. Yeah, that's the problem I have with some of Gary's men. Some of my men as well. They don't know how to hold back. And when the threat is perceived, since they're like, whoa, he was going to be turned into a slave anyway, they just kill him. And those two, well, I didn't even get the chance to reprimand those two. And trust me, Belle, they would have been seriously reprimanded. And I ain't talking about slap on the wrist, as you would probably think. I'm talking about they would have been thrown to the pits. So, yeah, so don't go thinking just because we enslave people that all of us are evil. Guarantee you some of these lords are actually massive pricks. As she would say that, he gives a chuckle. Yeah, well, good talking to you, Margaret. May fate deem you worthy to live past this little war. As he marches off and tells the men that they are to head to this area and to form a containment circle. There's 2 bridges, so it's all very well and good. And I'll say Belle and them are set up their own little fortification such and are at the ready. Just waiting. And Margaret's whole team and them do what they usually would. Making their moves on the men and such, because that is one of their things that they are paid to do and such, so most of them just go for the average guys and such, while some of them tried their shots with the war hounds, and a lot of them don't really get it, quote unquote. Some of them frustrated at this. Some of them even approach Belle, who just instantly get denied. And Aisha at one point try it, and Belle just flat out tells her no. And so they're just sitting around a fire why are none of the warhounds they're the toughest guys here? Some of them, but not all. Not all of them. That's just crazy, right? Is that just me? Yeah, it's weird. As some of the warhound is Belle's personal, Aaron hears this, what's wrong? You all seem disgruntled. As he talk well, we have a certain job. And he gets to lay down, he's he actually starts bellowing with laughter. Oh, you tried to do that with Warhound. Master Warhound. As he just starts laughing even more. And he says, well, he's married, you know. As they're wait, what? Yeah. As he mind if he sits down, he gives them the rundown. They're all slaves sent out here to fight. Nobody cares if they die or not, except for Master Warhound, as he would say that. Every battle, he's on the front line, right there by us. Sure, we've only been in 2 battles, but guaranteeing how outnumbered we were, and how any general in any form of the word typically likes to hang back, minimizing threat to himself. He's up there crushing the enemy and weakening the enemy lines to, even when it's him against 100 of them by himself, He stands at the ready to cut down any enemy that would dare try to harm us. And he also has something way more important to get home to. And they ask what? Well, as he says, as you heard me, he's married. And as they say, what? He's married. Yeah. He tells us that all the Pitfires know this about him pretty much. But before he was taken as a slave, he was a farmer and such, farming the fields, and was actually supposed to marry a farmer he's helped, a farmer's daughter that he frequently helped with bulls, apparently. And they like bulls, like cows and such. Yeah, that guy was wrestling cattle to the ground that were about the size of some of you, and not about the size of some of you, about the size of a lot of people, and then was like taking them to the ground with headlocks when he was 14. As he says this, he's been fighting his entire life. That's also another reason why he's been called the War Hound. He seems perfectly outfitted for war. So as Aaron gives this, Loken, Cassius, and Lucius all come over, discuss their tales on how Bell trained each of them, and they also start asking about what's the deal with the cloaks and the chains. They all describe how that's a teaching they followed from Bell. And as Bell is just up looking at his plans and such, he takes a break and such to go and walk around the camp, seeing how the men are. A lot of the slaves and gladiators look up to him, quite literally in fact, look up to him and just like sort of, in a weird form of respect or reverence, they always bow their head as he goes by them. His drake or salamander cloak and such trailing behind him, not them, trailing behind him. As all these warriors recognize Bell as the true master of the war hounds and such. So, as they all recognize this, they're all getting prepared. And some of them even ask Bell, what's our strategy for this upcoming war? He's like, well, we will hold the line, is essentially what I've been given the orders to do so. We're being reinforced by heavy reinforcements from the Empire and such. So, we'll be just fine. As he puts his hand on a guy's shoulder, the guy is like reassured quite well. But as all of them say, as he has trained them, and then even during, I'll say that this wasn't the first time they were called into action. I'll say Bell and them actually had gone on a few missions before that time he was sent out to go look at the villages that had gone dark. They were actually sent out a few times to squash a few rebellions, or slave rebellions, quote unquote, that had run off into the woods such. As Bell and them were sent into the woods, this is when they were like in training and such. Bell was sent out with Margaret again and her team and such, and they were sent out to kill forces. And they told each time like how Bell had at least a single time had saved their lives. And Aaron says, he one time took 2 spears to the gut to save me. As he covered me, he took several injuries, bleeding from the wounds he had earned. He has done that for each and every one of us, at least once, or to some extent. There's no one will follow more than the warhounds. Our master. Gary may call himself our master, but a master is one you choose to follow. Gary is our slave owner, nothing more. As the Amazonians, some of them have a newfound respect for slaves and Belle as the slave that has risen to a very high status, even though while being a slave. But that'll be the end of this. This was just supposed to be like a short thing. I hope you all enjoyed this, and I hope you all have a nice day, nice night, nice life, or whatever time you are watching this at. Thank you, and goodbye.